Thank you very much. Welcome to the Mobility and Millennials panel. For you, what are the standout characteristics of the millennial generation?
They are accused of being self-obsessed, entitled, glued to their mobile phones. Now that might be true, but at the same time, for a generation who's come of age during a global recession, and also now increasingly are forming their adult life in an increasingly polarized world, they're actually surprisingly optimistic and civic-minded.
I don't necessarily think we are self-obsessed. I think we are now, we have technology in our hands, and everyone lives in their own little bubble, so we can share our lives. Certainly for me, it's not really, my content, for example, on my channel isn't really about me as such. It's about me talking about something or displaying something or discussing something, but just from my opinion. It's less about, hey, look how good my hair looks.
People just want to find that next way to make their life more efficient as instantly as possible. And I think that's what's going to define the generation in terms of what people have to provide. When you look at brands and relationships, the social consciousness aspect of it is incredibly important to young people these days. I mean, any brand or service that gets a bad reputation for doing something wrong can just get completely shunned by the whole younger generation that really care about, being or definitely appearing to be as ethical as possible.
We're at a time where we can really shape the future right now, but we could also make some really big missteps. And for me, we're in an era of personalisation. So I think what you guys are talking about, I mean, you take your world around with you, you're personalising everything. Transportation and mobility is becoming personalised.
Owning a car is about, convenience, but it's also about that feeling of freedom. But of course, if you can get that from somewhere else, if you can get convenience by using taxi apps, public transport is getting better. One of my colleagues is moving using a zip car this weekend, is millennial. If something can replace the car in being convenient, then perhaps you don't need to own a car. But I think then another point is what you touched on as well, is that millennials actually live in smaller spaces because of urbanization, but also lack of home ownership, so living with friends or living with parents. So the car can almost become a third space, or a place where you can have some privacy, listen to music, but also a personalized space.
I love driving on my own. In fact, if my wife's in the car, I'm often like, have a nap, love. So I just want her to go to sleep so I can actually just be in my own space, because I use that as my thinking time. I have my music on, and I just like being on just a long road. I really enjoy it, and I do like to, sometimes when I'm going back home to see my mum back in Norwich, and my wife, Tan, doesn't want to come, I'm like, oh, awful. Because I actually just really like my own space.
I don't know where we'd be without a car. Living on that rural edge just outside of London, we're having to ferry them backwards and forwards to various activities. It's almost it's a necessity. Yeah, okay, it's a hybrid electric, but it's a necessity.
But this is actually a millennial point as well, because of urbanization, people moving into cities, the urban spaces are becoming bigger, the suburban areas are becoming bigger, and a lot of millennials are, because of house prices, forced to buy or live further out. And then, as you say, transport is really important.
And right now, your needs can be fulfilled with all these services like Uber, Lyft, and all these car services that you can call on demand and they come right away. But also then, why would you want to own a car? It's really about the desire. So desire for personal space, desire for mobility, for freedom. So then the question is, then how do you drive that desire? And those would come from the experiences of what the automobile can provide. And as we move more towards an autonomous car, the era of autonomous cars, then we really have to think about what kind of experiences that you can provide within that car space.
There is a perception that millennials don't care about brands, that brand loyalty has gone down. It's not true. They do care about brands more than other generations, but I guess the relationship to brands has changed. So maybe loyalty is down, but brand passion is up.
So if there was a brand that didn't have much of a story, but it just said, hey, I've splashed loads of cash, that's not value anymore. Value is having a story. It's being able to choose something for a reason because it has history, but it's also being able to define yourself by showing others what you've chosen.
I think the kind of joke about millennials, or maybe the cliche, is that you know, your art, you have your artisan coffee in the morning, and all the words that you were just talking about then, you know, authenticity. But I think there is a focus on provenance, and I think that is saying, does this brand belong here, or have they just seen an opportunity?
If something is like, hey, we're opening up about how this is made, here's the people that have done it, here's what we're trying to do, then it's like, okay, they're being honest, I like it, I can see it. Whereas if something's a bit distant and they're talking, you know, if they use the word millennials all of a sudden, it's like, oh no, this isn't for me. Exactly.
Maybe it's a little bit like evangelism, you know, in the sense of if there's that authenticity and they really believe in it, you know, that kind of group of people will really champion it, and they'll put it out there socially an awful lot.